Today I'm reviewing the Samsung 55-inch Class OLED S95F 4K glare-free Smart TV, 2026 model. If you want to check current pricing or availability, that's linked below. I've lived with this panel for a few weeks now, daily viewing of movies and shows, gaming sessions, sports, and regular streaming, and what follows is based on how it behaves in real-world use rather than spec sheets alone. Let's start with a clear expectation. This TV is not a budget panel, and it isn't designed to compete with the very cheapest screens on the market. It's positioned toward people who care about picture quality and responsiveness without going full reference-grade professional displays. In everyday viewing, the OLED screen impresses with deep blacks and very wide viewing angles. Shows and movies feel rich because dark scenes hold detail without washing into gray. This makes nighttime viewing feel more immersive, even in a moderately lit living room. The glare-free finish also helps reduce distracting reflections when windows are nearby. It doesn't eliminate them entirely, but it makes bright sunlight less of a hindrance. For HDR content, the panel's bright highlights are expressive without feeling artificial. HDR material has pop and depth that's noticeable compared to typical LED screens. It doesn't hit the absolute peak brightness of top-edge LED models in all lighting conditions, but the way the OLED handles contrast gives a sense of dimensionality that's hard to replicate on LCD. Gaming is where this set feels particularly capable. With the Motion Xcelerator 164Hz panel and minimal input lag in game mode, responsiveness feels tight. I tried it with modern consoles at 1080p and 1440p upscaled to 4K. Fast-paced titles look smooth without distracting judder. Adaptive sync behavior is practical for variable frame rates. This isn't just about headline refresh numbers, it's about how consistent the experience feels session to session. The NQ4AI Gen 3 processor delivers smooth upscaling from lower resolution sources and manages motion reasonably well. On very fast camera pans or sports, the processing keeps edges stable without harsh artifacting, something that can happen with over-aggressive motion smoothing elsewhere. I left most processing features at their natural settings and the picture still looked balanced. Dolby Atmos support through the built-in speakers gives a hint of spatial sound, but it's not a substitute for a dedicated soundbar or surround setup. Dialogue comes through clearly, and there's enough grounded low end that regular viewing feels complete, but if you want cinematic audio depth you'll likely add external speakers down the line. One honest trade-off with OLED remains: screen brightness in full sunlit rooms is good but not overwhelming. In heavily lit spaces, you'll sometimes see reflections when direct light hits the screen. The glare-free treatment reduces this compared to glossy panels, but it doesn't make reflections vanish. Smart TV performance feels stable and intuitive. App navigation is quick, and popular streaming services load without noticeable delay. There's nothing disruptive in day-to-day use here. Compared to high-end LED alternatives, this OLED doesn't chase the absolute highest nits in bright room scenarios, but it makes up for that with contrast depth and viewing angles that feel more natural in real content. Against other OLEDs I've used, the Samsung hangs with them in color richness and uniformity without obvious vignetting or banding in typical viewing. So who does this make sense for? You want deep blacks and wide viewing angles, you plan to watch lots of movies and HDR content, you game at moderate to high refresh rates with consoles or PC, you care about overall picture quality over raw peak brightness. It's less compelling if your room is flooded with direct sunlight all day and you prioritize brightest possible panel over contrast. In everyday use, this TV feels like a capable, well-rounded screen rather than a showpiece of exaggerated claims. It doesn't chase hype, it delivers practical improvements where most people actually notice them. Check current pricing below and evaluate it against your needs.